Black women. Good evening. It's late. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to do a little talking about how Black women exemplify beauty. Now, I know a lot of people try to make us feel bad about the way we look, and they go out of their way to try to hurt us by talking about our features, our skin color, the texture of our hair, the thickness, thinness, or whatever it is of our bodies. And I want to tell y'all, understand that when people do that to you, it is just a matter of them seeing the beauty in you and trying to destroy all of the goodness that they see in you they don't possess, or that they've been taught to have a problem with, because your kindness, your compassion, your beauty, your humanity, your understanding and empathy for other people come innately. It's not something you have to work at. I want to read you something from out of the book, um, Conspiracy to Destroy Black Women. You know, when I first got this book, I didn't really know what to make of it, heads or tails, but I said it would be an interesting read because whenever Black women get to the point where they no longer identify themselves the way that society does, you are seen as a problem. You know, in this book, I had just randomly read a couple of chapters. And the first chapter that I read was chapter 2, and it discussed the whole conversation about being called a bitch, hoe, or queen, and the role of women in rap music and videos. Now, this book was more than just common sense. It really spoke about the respectability politics and how degrad- degradation and degradatory names, how they impact people in ways people didn't really even understand, to the point where the person got desensitized to the music, the words, and the instructions in the words, and the character described in the words, to the point where they actually became the character and the instructions of the words in these very misogynistic, hateful, anti-women songs. So the author wrote to Black women. She said, and this is on page 7 of, paragraph of chapter 2, second paragraph. She says, "I'm writing this book to let every woman know that she, too, no matter what status or place in life, is royalty. This is particularly important for African American women to know inside and out, upside down and right side up. For so long in this society, we've been given and have allowed ourselves to take the role of slave, concubine, I hate this word, mammy, second class citizen, bitch, hoe, and others. Many of us have been so hurt and so dogged out by society and by men and by life that we can't even wrap our brains around the notion that we deserve better and that we are queens, right? So as I kept reading through, I just kept highlighting a few things that I want to read to you before I start talking about the need to have this thick skin because of the attacks on YouTube against us, the Black women on YouTube who try to get you to feel sorry for these Black males who are attacking us on YouTube and to stay committed and in relationships with them. And also black female content creators who believe that black women are ugly and that due to ugliness, we must have all types of issues with ourselves and really have these hidden all self pity bags and self hatred that we hide from the world, but we wear as a shroud every day in life. Um, then last but not least, I want to talk about the need to stop trying to hold on to and love on your wounded inner child and let go of all of the teachings that are coming from YouTube about how and why you should have a problem with your mother and how she's the root of all your problems when she's not. Because when you actually think about it, whenever you have a woman telling other women to have problems with the women that brought them into this world, that's the same thing, the same type of blame that all of these black males and everyone else in society tries to place on black women, as if black women are the ultimate creators of everything and anything that can go wrong or right in this world. When we are not. We are participants in this world just like everyone else who has no real control over how another person will react. What it, we have no control over other people. We have control over ourselves, yes, to a certain extent, but we don't have control over the situations and the systematic injustices and racisms that are in this world stacked against us. So I just want you to keep that in mind. We'll be talking about that, but I just want to read these highlights out of this book to just get what I mean in your mind. So another highlight is that due to that horrible rap music that usually disrespects black women and paints us in a disgusting light, that is not part of our culture, but is some sort of nasty, fake life experience, self expression that black males use to make money. So she says, Latifah states that women were created in her image. When she says her image, she's talking about the divine feminine. Unfortunately, the rap industry tends to shun positive messages put forth by such women as Sister Soldier and others because positive rap is a threat to the patriarchal white male power structure. The power structure understands the necessity of keeping us happy, violent, and lustful. Watching and listening to destructive lyrics serves this end. The victims of white supremacy must remain ignorant, meaning us black folks, if the white supremacist or white power structure, right, is to remain in power. Now, I mean, she's speaking to black women in this book, but literally that information she just gave right there speaks to every person in color in the world who has ever been colonized, right? Women are not to be protected, loved, and respected, but are to be purchased and used. Again, she's speaking to the power system and how that power is exercised by having that music resonate over the airwaves or over the social media platforms and people subliminally intake this music and have it alter their brains, their way of thinking, their behavior, and their actual essence of who they are. So if you ever try to stop this cycle, right, there is the one thing she says you should do, which is to involve your entire family, your children, husband, significant other, whoever, extended family, immediate family, into expressing their dissatisfaction with this music to the very people who put it out, meaning do like everybody else in this world when they come in contact with things that they do not like or that are maladaptive or maltreating to their people. They complain. They complain to the source, complain to the record company, complain to the television station, complain, and then stop using the service. Stop patronizing whoever it is that is asking you for your money to insult you. This is what she's suggesting, and I agree. You do this to avoid the dislike from becoming a us versus them situation, if you get what I mean. If everybody's on the same page of disliking what's going on, there will be no split down the middle of, oh, you guys just don't like what we're doing, hating on us because we're making money and you're not. No. If everyone is complaining about the quality of the material or the craft, then it's more likely for people to understand or it to be sustained that it's a problem on a whole. African American female relationships, African American women and males relationships are dynamic, have dynamics that give rise to the existence of single African American motherhood. That's what she said. I say it's due to a lack of respect for black people. I believe that that music, that socialization that males do with each other is a form of a value system that disrespects black women on the whole. They do not respect the humanity, the dignity, the person, the whole entire essence of that person being a human being. They don't respect that. And they reduce the person to a thing or a commodity that can be used. The author says the answer is because we both live in different value systems is the reason why that music can exist, the lyrics can be created and socialized and continued and hyped up and worshiped because black women and black males have two different value systems. And I think she's absolutely correct. She also goes on to say that in America, we are free to date and marry the person of our choice, but most of our relationships fail. Something is seriously wrong. That something is the value system in America by the patriarchal white supremacy systems that we live under. She goes on to say our freedom to choose and mate is not true freedom, but because we live within an alien society that is destructive in its belief system. Then she goes on to mention an author I'm very familiar with is Kwanzaa Kunjufu. And she says that he stated that we choose our clothes and cars better than we choose our mates in life in America. And I'd agree with that as well. Um, Mr. Kunjufu, she thinks, was correct in saying that. And she goes on to talk about how we are conditioned to like something that makes us feel good. An example of beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors is, if done at all, only superficially, which is very true. How many times have you been on YouTube or any social media platform and you've heard the term fake it till you make it, right? That's all sort of the same type of example she's talking about there. So I went to chapter 8 after chapter 2, and I started reading this chapter because it spoke about patriarchy and female subjugation, i.e., or otherwise known as submission, right? So she starts off speaking about bell hooks, and she says bell hooks discuss this madness in her book, Killing Rage, Ending Racism. I read that book, it was really, really good. I suggest you guys read it. It's Bell Hooks, Killing Rage. Okay. The author says here, I absolutely agree with Bell Hook's statement that women should not feel less feminine because they choose to speak against racism or against black male shaming, blaming, dehumanizing, and belittling of black women to get them to cater and worship to them as a result of black male pandering because of black women beginning to recognize black femicide and moving away from them, not having relationships with them, not having children with them, is making them very nervous, very violent, and very scared. But I'm going to speak in a little while about why you shouldn't be afraid at all. So we know she agrees with Bell Hooks, and she said that feminine black women should not be looked at as less feminine because they speak out against racism. She says patriarchy basically espouses the belief that that it's impossible by nature for women to be equal to men, which is not true. I have been saying that forever, and I'm glad she's mentioned that because that is where you get that nonsense about men are stronger than women and women are not stronger than men, and you convince yourself that you are inferior to males by believing in stuff like that. Now, understand me, all people are individuals. You will have in both sexes of human beings men who are stronger than women and women who are stronger than men. That is how it goes. It is an individual thing, it is not a gender thing. So, when the author of The Conspiracy to Destroy Black Women is speaking, she's speaking to why the things in the patriarchy and institutionalized racism that makes you think this way. So I'm gonna read it out and then talk about it. So patriarchy basically espouses the belief that it's impossible by nature for women to be equal to men. Women leave their mother's wombs inferior to men. Thus, female subjugation becomes the natural order of things. Patriarchy's practice of a family's lineage being based on the father is not the natural order of things. African civilizations, which are the oldest known to mankind, were matriarchal. Africans had no problem worshiping goddesses such as Hathor and Aset, otherwise known as Isis, or having female rulers such as Queen Candace, Queen Nazinga, and Queen Nefertiti, to name a few. I personally like also Queen or Pharaoh Hatshepsut. Hat, Hatshepsut. I always mess up her name. Hatshepsut. Hatshepsut. She was tough as hell and one of the most. And Queen Nandi, who was Shaka Zulu's mom, and oh my God, it was so many others that was just so great. So, but although the paranoid, insecure, patriarchal white male power structure allows some white females to hold a pressureship position, it is intimidated by the presence of a, a female sense of self, which we know to be altogether true because of the Roe versus Wade, and before Roe versus Wade was argued at the Supreme Court level, and abortions became legal before they overturned them most recently. Um, the whole thing was that women in general were pushing back against male dominance and complete subjugate subject subjugation from males because of the fact that women were considered property, not even human beings. So okay. Then she says, under white male supremacy, a female is encouraged to become a woman only when she conforms to the boundaries forced upon her. Women can be subjugated only if they, through missocialization or fear, consent to being subjugated. Those whom white supremacy subjugates, white supremacy destroys. This is the ultimate danger of patriarchy, in both ways subtle and obvious. It's okay to exploit, physically beat, deceive, terrorize, and yes, kill women, especially non white and poor women. How is it that a woman is good enough to have life come through her body, but not good enough to have lineage pass through her? Think about that. Think about that. Let that sink. For thousands of years, and even to this day, the Africans had no problem. The matriarchal system is the base of the social organization in Egypt and throughout Africa, which is completely true. So, what's wrong with the white male power structure? It's very simple. And the answer is they can't comprehend equality. That is no realer than it gets. That's the reason why America has such a problem with giving black people their reparations, who are ADOS people in this country, because they do not understand nor appreciate or want to give into equality. They always have to have a head start and undue advantage. I was going to say fair advantage. No, an advantage is not fair. An undue advantage to maintain because they know that if they had to compete with everybody on an equal playing field through equality, they would lose. They see the contemporary nature of man and woman because of their warped system is based on fear of differences, competition, and violence. Thus, matriarchy is synonymous with weakness. You see how that ties in? It is clear that very little man, woman man harmony can exist under such a system. And it kind of makes sense because when you think about how we have all this nonsense going on in Black YouTube where you have, I don't get into titles and fall into categories because I am a grown up with a deeper sense of self than picking a side because it's not about a sport. It's about living real life, right? So that happens in real life when you see like BWE, divestors, whatever they call those other women that always talk about femininity. I really, the level of people, I got a certain respect for them. I like them. The business orientated, IT orientated black women on here. It's many of us, right? So when you have all those different entities and then you have the people that are on here that go against them of of the male gender, this is what she's talking about. This is what she means by the fact that in the warped system of patriarchy, right, where the belief is predicated on the fear of differences, the fear of competition, the fear of violence, right? To think on those terms on a regular basis is why people constantly think that women can't do things. They talk that ignorance of males should lead because they have created a mentality and a mindset to make people think that matriarchy is synonymous with weakness. They also have coupled that weakness theory with the whole world being colonized, brainwashed, and given their indoctrination of the right amount of patriarchy to believe that womanhood is synonymous with weakness. That is something that is hard for me to say because I take such offense to that because the beauty of womanhood is incredible. It is like when a woman gives birth, when she experiences motherhood for the first time, when she experiences love for the first time, and I don't mean in a relationship, I mean like any type of love, the innocence of child love to its mother, the love of a pet, or it could be something as simple as a blanket that they don't want to let go of, because it's not about a physical thing with love that I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the mental connection and the emotional feeling of comfort and security. That's what I'm talking about. So um, I agree with this author. She says a man and woman that enjoy mutual respect, which is what I am completely on board for and I advocate for. I don't want to hear all that nonsense about anything in relationships. It's about mutual respect. If there is no mutual respect, in my opinion, there should be no relationship. So man and a woman that enjoy mutual respect for one another are better able to combat patriarchy, white male supremacy, and everything else, right? Patriarchy is instilled in young boys through a socialization process that allows boys to conduct themselves inappropriately. That nonsense that they say all the time, boys will be boys. Remember that? He's sowing his wild oats. He really likes the ladies. He's a ladies' man. And all that stupidity you heard growing up. Patriarchy also teaches women to never, under any circumstances, question male authority. Don't we see that going on right now with the fear of standing up and speaking up about black femicide? Don't we see that all over in the black communities? And it really outrages me that black women could desensitize themselves to the point where they turn their heads away or shrug off the fact that a black male that would not be alive had it not been for that black woman. He took her life or her child's life savagely, and black women sit there and will still take the side of the black male over the black woman. You that is patriarchy to the 99th power. I'm gonna do that again. Patriarchy also teaches women to never, under any circumstances, question male authority. This father knows best aspect of the patriarchal system ignores, frustrates, and suppresses feminine or woman mind power and pays absolutely no attention at all to the wealth of experiences women have to share. This practice while beneficial to the patriarchal white male power structure, is absolutely destructive to women and oppressed men. I don't know why she put that in there, but okay. Then okay, here's a great example because she's gonna start talking about body uh, identity. So she goes, for example, the African American woman and male should perceive themselves as one body fighting an unjust white supremacist system when we know we should not be like that. And I actually heard a YouTuber tonight say something like that, and I was very outraged. And I wrote in the chat, stop telling black women that. Black women are not connected to black males because black males will certainly tell you with the quickness they are not connected to black women. And we're not. We may be of the same people, but we are not the same entity. So that really gets me. So for an example, African American woman and male should perceive themselves as one body fighting an unjust white racist system, but they don't. Women are seldom invited to voice their opinions or share information. And as a result, our families, our institutions, our communities are not balanced and they're violently out of control, plagued with black femicide that black women need to speak up and yell and scream and rally about. Allowing to continue all of these bad practices in our community, a lot of us will perish, she says. And we know this for a fact. We know that definitely because every 4 to 5 hours a day, black women and children are killed in this country by black men. So she later says, white male supremacist power structure pathology is healthy and dysfunctionality is functional. If you get what she's saying. What she's saying is the craziness of their power structure that they put together turns everything, like she said in the beginning, upside down, sideways, and right side up. Nothing standing or erect in the proper way nature dictates it should be. He goes on to say the victims of this power structure often see right as wrong and upside down as right side up. Patriarchal practice and philosophy are frontal assault on women. Healthy female and male relationships and common sense. It's an assault on all of that. The fears and insecurities of this power structure needs patriarchy in order for them to feel in control of themselves and everyone else. In the next chapter, in chapter 9, she starts talking about creating the dysfunctional mother, right? Kind of like a situation of you damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I want to start talking about that right now before I read anything she has to say about that. Okay, so tonight, right? I happen to be doing my thing, which was after I wound down in my house, finished, eating and everything, and I had some time to lay around on the couch and just unwind at home before going to bed and everything. I started just looking around on YouTube and I saw a couple of people that I'd like to check out. I don't really like their conversation, but I like to stay abreast of what black women are talking about on YouTube. So I was listening to a YouTuber named Sulcus Ray. I don't know how many of you know her, but she has a huge following and she calls herself the ambassador of the Ugly Girls Club, right? Now, sometime back, I made a comment to her about how some of her true self was showing and she pretty much lost it, right? And I was okay with that. But tonight, one second. So she was speaking tonight about the relationships that mothers and daughters have and a wounded inner child. Now she didn't say that. That's what I'm saying because that comes from psychology. And pretty much what she was talking about was this thing in the book that the author is explaining with great creativity about how the dysfunctional mother was created. Now, many times you'll hear a lot of people blaming all of their shortcomings on their mom, acting as if their mother is not also affected by the very things in society that they are affected by. So I'm gonna read this paragraph beginning to let you know show you where she's coming from. So she says, the crazy or dysfunctional woman is primarily the creation of insecure male power structure, right? To really understand certain definitions and terms, it's necessary to examine the mentality of those who created them. Since America was established on the beliefs, opinions, fears, and desires of Anglo Saxon, white, English white male, white men, sorry, let me do that again. Since America was established on the beliefs, opinions, fears, and desires of Anglo Saxon, English white males, every behavior exhibited by Naya, stop. Every behavior exhibited by non-whites and women is subject to ridicule, oppression, or elimination, right? White males possess a collective brotherhood of rulership mentality that is in full operation, even when they're at war. And what she's saying right now is really true and really poignant because when you think about Ukraine and Russia, right? So currently, what's going on between Ukraine and Russia is that Russia wants to annex Ukraine, and of course, Ukraine does not want to be annexed to Russia. They want their own autonomy, which is only right, right? So, although these are two white European males fighting each other, the level of diplomacy from the world and these two white male leaders is incredible because you had the Ukraine president come to America more than once to request money for different things he needed in war to fight against Russia, and it was given to him. And Russia actually stopped, waited for him to get an answer or whatever the case may be, and to return to his country before this war continued. Um, However, at the same time, you do not have that same amount of civility and respect towards violence or end of war or peacetime during a time of war for the wars that are currently going on in Africa, different territories of America, Mexico, and etc. People are ignoring those and feeling like because they are people of color, it does not matter if they have a request for time out for a minute. I got some important stuff to handle. I think we need to give people their respect, time to collect their dead, and etc. The way that they used to do way back when. So when she's making this point, this is very true. And then she goes on to talk about how with this collective brotherhood of rulership mentality, right? Um, the creation and the maintenance of power defined by these guys, right? Is the ability to dominate and destroy other people. Absolutely require that these white male rulers dysfunctionalizes any thought or behavior that does not arrive from their own mind. Mothers, now we go back into the women, right? So because women are the extenuating factors of this one situation. Mothers, especially non-white and poor, are the daily targets of such madness. And you see this every day, all the time. You see this in commercials, you see this in magazines, you see these in uh, social media videos that go viral because of dysfunction, like the Hispanic woman that cut off her daughter's hair because she felt like she was going to teach her daughter a lesson about trying to be worrying about being beautiful instead of taking her lessons seriously and doing her homework. You see this in the numerous viral videos where black women are ridiculously embarrassing their children in front of the entire world for being a child and doing stupid childish things. This is what she's talking about, and that's how people are daily targeted for the madness. And this is how the madness is further how we started off with the paragraph, the crazy or the dysfunctional woman is primarily the creation of insecurity by these white male power holders who instruct by way of allowing these things to happen, indoctrinate people into thinking that the dysfunction goes hand in hand with the person and that is a natural part of the person instead of understanding that this is just a learned behavior of an even greater matrix of dysfunction that this person is acting out. So then she goes on to talk about the mentality is existing amongst the collective uh, power structure of the white male psyche contains a weird schizophrenic psychopathology that upholds the sanctity of family while implementing racist and sexist policies that prevent people from forming and supporting healthy families. And you see that in the way that my pet peeve here in New York City is that every time a politician wants to win a race or gain office, the first thing they do is run to the black people are the problem, because they commit the most crime trope. They never, even if, and we know it's a fact that black people commit crime, but it is never a fact that the crime they commit is the reason why people do not have adequate amounts of jobs. They don't have adequate housing, affordable rent, proper and decent and fair, even equitable education, the ability to make the same money their white counterparts make. Um, that those are the things that actually put people into uh, poor communities, put them into poverty, put them into generational, as they said in the first beginning of this chapter, crazy and dysfunctional behaviors underneath these women that are created out of this situation or system that is designed to make people act out these behaviors that are always going to be subject to ridicule, oppression, and or think that people should be eliminated because they display these behaviors or characteristics. Okay. So after that, she says, the economic reality of American society discourages many men and women from getting married and starting families. Some people will marry but not produce children because the cost of rearing them is incredible. Then she goes on to say, let's examine how misdefining manhood negatively impacts womanhood. Now, I'm interested in this because I hadn't gotten this far. So she says, America defines manhood as a male with large sums of money. In this sick definition of manhood, which I understand what she means by how it's sick to think that's a definition of manhood, because when you think about the power structure that she spoke about previously, if you are one of those subgroups who are being denied access to the capability of having large sums of money, then immediately, i.e., you would not be deemed or fit the definition of being able to reach the status of manhood, right? So this is all what she's talking about and playing into the extension of how one thing runs into another, creating the really uh, disparate system and power structure that exists that creates all of this dysfunction and poverty. So then she goes on and she says, in this sick definition of manhood, a millionaire is superior to a man earning $7 an hour. The psychological impact of this definition is nothing less than devastating, which is true. Which is why when some of you come on and you talk about how you say, "Oh, well, they're conquered and they are completely devastated," or whatever it is, right? To show that the person just has become hopeless and helpless, right? That is that's what comes out of this. So then she says, many men accept it as true, and unfortunately, so do women. And that's what she means by when she says negatively. Okay, let me go back to the big when she says that part about. All right. So basically, what she's saying, the misdefinition of manhood negatively impacts womanhood because of the fact that many people accept it to be true, and unfortunately, so do many. And we see that all the time in how people will, all over the place, look at someone, and if they don't look like they are materialistically rich, they have no value. Kind of like, and I know this happens in the black community a lot. It's kind of like when a person has a lot of knowledge, but they don't have a lot of material things or they're really not where other people think they should be in life, and they give out advice or they give out information, and another person will look at them and go, how do you think you could tell me to do something when you couldn't even do it for yourself? That is what she's talking about in that paragraph right there, because it's not about the material accomplishments. Because if it was just a matter of people sitting down, completing a task, and then being properly paid for it, everyone would have this materialistic gain or this monetary gain and large sums of money, the way she said earlier in the paragraph, to make them fit into this definition of manhood and womanhood. But we all know that's not the way the world really works, is that in each country, without exception, the power structure or the ruling party at the time, they make it extremely difficult for all of the other groups of people who work very hard to obtain the very things that these groups who are in the power structure get from the groups who are not within the power structure. So this is what she means when she's talking about the misdefinition of manhood and how it affects womanhood. Because when you start believing in this stuff, you keep the dysfunction going to the point where it will never stop, because people are beginning to look at each other as the problem instead of the power structure and what they are being denied that is keeping them in poverty and keeping them dysfunctional. So she makes a lot of points, but I wish she would have focused more so on women and how black women, if they would understand some of these very things that she's talking about, instead of her worrying about trying to appear to be so fair and so equal on both sides, she would have, in my opinion, reading the book, she would have been able to drive the point home a lot harder and a lot quicker if she would have made it about, look at yourself, do a self assessment, do analysis of your life. Look at the things that you can do for yourself that would better yourself, that would enable you to make more money because of you doing those things that make you a better person. That to me would have clicked more so than the comparison between what the guys do versus the women. Because if you're complaining, in my opinion, about a patriarchal system, then you can't do the comparison of women to the guys because it's already unfair. So I'm gonna do this last part and end this out and talk about the thing with the mom, and then I'll be done. So she goes on and she says, under such a social structure, men and women become predator and prey. This is very true because we know this, and this is a matter of fact. If a woman or mother is dysfunctional, it is because this white male power structure and power holders view good as that which makes money and bad as that which does not make money. Coupling this with the practice of defining humans along racial, gender, and economic lines, one can see that the patriarchal power structure is the largest predator of human destruction. Males are not qualified to define womanhood. I'm going to say that two more times. Males are not qualified to define womanhood. Males are not qualified to define womanhood. Although many men have, at various points throughout history, exploited women, collectively speaking, acts as if they carried women in their own wombs and gave birth to women. The arrogance of males and the male white power structure has launched a frontal assault on Mother Nature herself. Such A suicidal assault on nature should give a very clear signal to women. It really should. I want to point out that when she's saying this right now, it's not just a matter of her having a emotional pushback. It's real because when you look at what's going on in the world where nature is really out of balance at this point because of the fact that you have had so many countries with their quotas on the births of little girls. You now have a world that's out of balance with nature because there are more males than women in the entire world. Now, when you look at the world and you look at nature and how nature dictates things, that is imbalance because in the animal kingdom, in the plant kingdom, whatever kingdom, it is always the female who is supposed to outnumber the male because when you think about the reproduction process, you can have one male work with five to however many females or women or whatever for reproduction. But you cannot have it the other way around. It is not physically possible. One woman cannot have five children, five different children from five men at the same time. It is not possible. So when this type of thing happens and it throws the world and nature out of whack and out of balance, you have nature saying automatically, I must make this right. So then you have the increase of violence, you have the increase of death, killing, and etc. Because that is how nature makes things right. You see it all the time when you look at the Animal Channel, Nat Geo, whatever. Whenever a population gets outnumbered and out of control and it offsets the ecosystem, nature comes along and says, we must fix this. So I don't know what is going on in every single part of the world, but I do know that as a fact of nature being unbalanced, and you can check this if you'd like, many women who have recently gotten pregnant with male children, male boy fetuses, their bodies have been aborting those babies. Something there haven't been many women that go full term to bring the male child into existence. And like I said, a lot of times this is stuff that goes beyond our comprehension. It goes beyond who we are and what we think we are because we are not all knowing and we don't even know what brought us here, why we're here, or why we leave here. So whatever it is that makes sure does its job to make sure things stay balanced, it is working on human beings now because it has gotten so out of control. And then when you add to the fact that there's been so many deaths of black women all over this world that is also contributing to the imbalance in the order of the world. You know, I can't even speculate on how the world will make the balance come back right, but it will. And we know it to be true because that is how evolution comes into existence and etc. So listen, all I can say is that people need to really start paying attention to things that this author is talking about and others about understanding that the way that you live in life because it was taught to you indoctrinated to you is not the way you should be living. And I really believe that once people start backtracking from this nonsense we were indoctrinated into thinking that we supposed to live in a patriarchy and all of these things that this white power structure tells us is the way we're supposed to be, we need to start pulling back from that and doing what we know nature has put inside of us to tell us what is right to do. Like the way that anti-blackness is such an issue and people know inside of them that they know they're wrong when they're doing that stuff. Stop doing it. Do the opposite. Do what your instinct is telling you to do. Do it. because that is what nature has dictated within you in your DNA to do, not what you have been indoctrinated or taught to do by culture, religion, societal norms, Norways, folkways, etc. Do not do that. Do not do what ethnocentricity has taught you to believe about yourself, your people, where you come from. You are messing up what nature has dictated is supposed to be the way the world works, which is only going to unfortunately bring upon us some type of horrific craziness to set things right, which is sad, but has been historically the case throughout the history of the world when nature goes out of whack. So please think about that. I'm going to end now with what she's saying about the miseducation and self-destruction. Okay. So as she as she winds up saying that the power structure is a frontal assault on women and Mother Nature itself, she says that people, and I agree, right? People must free their minds and souls from the hell of this white power structure, this white dominion, so to speak, because it's gonna be the destruction of all of us if you don't stop it, pull back from it, reject it, do what feels natural to you about your fellow person. Miseducation and self-destruction. Miseducation and self-destructive definitions of manhood and womanhood have programmed many women to believe in the many psychiatric labels of emotional and mental disturbance. Many women run to male therapists expecting to be rescued from the storms of life. Women must come together to discuss the origin of the pressures they face. Women must understand that psychiatric labels project onto victims the insecurities and dysfunctions of those white males. In fact, many of the disturbances women suffer are a natural and perfectly understandable reaction to oppression. Now, that's a whole different conversation that would take probably a couple of days to go into about the reaction to oppression, because the funny thing about that is that it has nothing to do with race. All people throughout the history of the world who have been oppressed have reacted the same exact way, within the same exact amount of time, with the same amount of emotion, frustration, desperation, and just what is the word for saying when a person is they're done, they're at the point where they say, well, I don't have anything to lose, so I'm going for all of it, whether I win or lose. They get to that point. They get to the breaking point. That's the only thing I could come up with. And once that happens, that's the only time the power structure understands that, oh, we're pushing a little too hard. We need to pull back. And a current example of that type of stuff is what happened a couple of days ago in California and in Maryland, where the people in those cities had huge demonstrations out of the blue called Take Our Streets Back, right? Now, while it was supposed to be, for the most part, a positive, social, supposed to be nonviolent demonstration or expression, it did get a little crazy. There was a lot of the typical looting, fighting, stealing. Unfortunately, a couple of people lost their lives, so I don't want to highlight that, but I just want to bring out that this is an example of the reactions to people being oppressed. Because if you go on Google or if you look at the news and where those particular take back the streets demonstrations happen, you'll see that it wasn't one people, it was all types of people from that particular state or that area, that neighborhood that were just frustrated with the fact that inflation has gone up, rent has gone up, food has gone up, childcare has gone up, gas has gone up, everything has gone up, but my pay has stayed the same, or my pay has disappeared because I no longer have a job, or I got injured and I'm sick right now and I don't have the money that I usually have had in the past to make my life sustainable or workable for me. This is the or I completely just got evicted, or I just completely became homeless, don't have a job. What am I going to do? I'm destitute now. That's what was going on in these places. And when you look at the crime in those two particular places where they had those "we're taking our streets back" demonstrations, the crime was significant, um, and not crimes of like madness like murder and mayhem, but crimes of necessity. Um, Stealing from the grocery store, stealing from the gas station, stealing out of the baby store, just basic necessities of people, stealing clothes, the things to keep people warm. I mean, because we're still in the part of the season where it's cold in places. You may have a intermittent warm day every now and then, but it's still cold. So people were stealing like coats, hats, gloves, scarves, boots, sneakers, shoes, pants, sweat clothes. Yeah, ridiculous. Backpacks for their children to show you that they didn't even have enough money to buy their kids a bag so they can go to school. And then you have these Republican people on every outlet you can think of talking about how they're not going to approve, or they want to go along with raising the debt, the ceiling debt, because uh, it's too high as it is. But you're not looking or thinking about the cost of the inevitable, which is societal chaos, and God forbid, complete society anarchy, because you cannot keep taking from people who do not have until they do exactly what this author was saying in this book, which is react to oppression. And when they do that, then what? Then it won't be safe for any of us to go outside to do anything, because all of us will be up for grabs. And then what? But this is what happens when nature is allowed to go out of whack. And in this case, in this particular moment of what I'm talking about, is when people do not push back appropriately against these power structures that oppress out of satisfaction or instant gratification, you will have chaos. And once it happens in one place with the pop up, we're taking our streets back, you know it will continue. And we don't need that violence in our society. We do not. We don't. Collectively, you have to vote for your best interest, Black women. You have to go to those polls, no matter what state, city, wherever you live, and you have to vote in regards to women's equal pay, issues on child care, eviction, get into grassroots programs, speak up, demand, start, get into office, fight for these things, fight for stronger domestic violence laws, fight for the enforcement of an executive order against the killing of Black women by and little girls from Black femicide. You got to do these things. This is the way you push back and start to reel back in the balance. You have to. Otherwise, it will get more violent and more crazy and more ridiculous. But even if it does, you're not supposed to fear it. You're supposed to get more violent as well. so that you can make it through that patch to get to the other side, to try to reel it all back in, to put it back in order, put it back in balance. Right. Thank you for listening. Good night.